Alright, so you're welcome. This is the English language with Mr. Techno, and today I'll be talking on an important topic called verbs. Alright, now this topic is essential for both O-level students and students in their first year, that is the 100 level in tertiary institutions of the universities, colleges of educations, and even polytechnics. So I'm going to be discussing content pertaining to verbs that is useful for both the O-level students sitting UTME, SFCE, GCE, NECO, and the likes, and also students who are in their first year in any tertiary institution, and also for those who will be sitting the IELTS. Alright, so persons who wish to study abroad or work abroad and need to show proof of English language proficiency, you will need the contents of this video, especially as it relates to structure. Okay, so knowledge of verbs is going to affect your writing, your IELTS writing, and then your IELTS speaking. So do enjoy. All right, we have a simple outline here: definition, types or rows of verbs, and then verb forms. So let's begin with the definition. What is a verb, or what is the etymology of the word verb? So it will interest you to know that the term verb is obtained from the Latin language, and it is called verbum. So the term verb is obtained from Latin, and it is termed verbum. And the expression verbum simply means very important or the most important thing. The term verbum means very important or the most important thing. So by definition, or by etymology rather, we see that verb is from the root word verbum, which means very important or the most important thing. Based on this, we can see clearly why verbs are regarded as very important in the use of the English language. Okay, if you have seen my video on sentence patterns, you will understand what I mean by very important, because the verb together with a subject can actually stand alone. They can stand on their own and form the simplest sentence structure we have, which is called the SV pattern. Okay, so I equally explained that any sentence or statement or piece of writing that does not have a verb will most likely not make sense, or at least not make complete sense. Okay, so verbs are very important. And lastly, I mentioned that verbs are the grammatical motto of a sentence. Yes, they are actually language vehicles. They help to convey us from one part of a sentence to another, telling us the various activities that are ongoing and also revealing the state of being of the persons involved. Okay, so now how do we define a verb? Because we cannot just say that a verb is the most important thing and leave it at that. All right, so by definition, a verb is simply defined as an action word. So if a word shows action, it is a verb. All right, as an action word, E.g., dance. This is a verb. It shows action: dance, jump, shout, sit, run, walk, go, come, laugh. All these are verbs because they show action. But beyond showing action, verbs can also be seen as words that show us what we call a state of being. Please take note of that. So beyond telling us action, verb equally can show us a state of being. Yes, telling us the state of being of a person. All right. For example, I make a statement like, he is happy. He is happy. The verb here, which is not denoting an action per se. The verb is telling us the state of being of this person. And together with this adjective called happy, all right, we understand that this person's state of being is that of happiness. Excellent. So the definition of a verb is not complete if we stop at action words. No. The definition of a verb extends further to showing us a state of being. A state of being. Okay, just as we can see here. Excellent. So now we know the definition of a verb. We now proceed to what we call the types or the roles of verbs. For O-level students, ordinary level students, it is called types of verbs. But for those in their first year or for those sitting the IELTS, you will have to treat it as roles and not types. Yes. Okay, because what we call types of verbs is a categorization on the basis of the roles they perform. So it is actually the roles of verbs. You see that now? Good. So when we say roles of verbs, we are simply saying, let me use this section. When we say roles of verbs, we are simply saying the function of verbs in sentences or in a sentence. Okay, so number one, we have something we call helping verbs. Helping verbs. Okay, now these helping verbs are also called auxiliary verbs. Yes, your helping verbs are also called auxiliary verbs. The auxiliary verb is divided into two categories, which are the primary auxiliary and the modal auxiliary. So your helping verbs, also called auxiliary verbs, are divided into two: the primary auxiliary verbs and the modal auxiliary verbs. Now, when is a verb said to be a helping verb, or what does it mean when we say the role of a verb is that of helping? Okay, we are simply saying or referring to a category of verbs, all right, that cannot stand on their own. They cannot function alone. Yes. And so they require assistance. They require help from other verbs, principally the main verb. They require assistance from other verbs in order to function. All right? Good. So that's what they mean, or what it means to be called a helping verb. So they need help. They cannot function on their own. They need the assistance of the principal verb, also called the main verb, otherwise known as the lexical verb. Okay, so a lexical verb, on the other hand, is that verb that can actually stand on its own and operate without assistance from any other verb. That's a principal verb. You see that now? Good. Now, don't forget I said the auxiliary verb is of two categories: primary auxiliary and modal auxiliary. The primary auxiliary verbs are mainly used for what we call denoting a state of being. Yes, denoting a state of being. The primary auxiliary verbs function in this area more often. Just like I showed you here. The verb is, all right, is categorized as a primary auxiliary verb. So they denote a state of being. Yes. And then the primary auxiliary verb, the main verb here is what we call the verb to be. The main verb in the primary auxiliary family is what we call the verb to be. This verb to be has 8 inflectional forms. 8. Okay, so let me make a list of that. We have be, we have been, we have being, we have is, we have am, we have was, we have are, and then we have were. So this is 2, 4, 6, 8, as you can see. All right. Don't forget, part of our outline is something called forms of verbs, or we say verb forms. Okay. And the actual number of forms that a verb should have, primarily, there are 5. There are 5 forms a verb should have. All right. There is a 6th form, but it is not considered a primary form. There are 5. But the verb to be possesses 8. Please take note of this. For those of you in tertiary institutions, this is a 100-level question. Yes. One of the reasons that makes the verb to be, all right, strange or different from the conventional verb, that is the ordinary verb, is that it has 8 inflectional forms. There is another reason why the verb to be is also considered strange. Okay, and that reason is on the premise that whenever you see the forms of a verb, you can trace those forms back to the root verb. For example, the verb here I called dance. I can give you the inflectional forms of dance as dance, dances, and a form we call dance in the past tense, and even an ing form called dancing. Can you see that? Excellent. Now what do you notice? Each of these other forms can be traced back to the original or the base form. You see that? Each of the others can be traced back to the original or the base form. Yes. So all that was added here was S. We can still see dance. All that was added here was D. We still have dance. All that was added here was ing, I replacing the letter E. We can still trace it to dance. Okay? But this is not the case for the verb to be. Apart from being, B-E-E-N, and B-E-I-N-G, the other forms of the verb to be cannot be traced back to it. That is what we are saying. You cannot connect them to the verb to be. Yes, because they contain entirely different letters. Do you see that now? So these are the two main reasons why the verb to be is said to possess an abnormal behavior. Okay, number one, I will reiterate. Number one, it has 8 inflectional forms, while the standard verb form should be 5. Number two, when we see the forms of the verb to be, there is no correlation between the forms and the root verb. Yes. So there is no means of identifying that these forms originate from this verb, as against the verb dance, which was my example. You see that now? Excellent. All right. So we proceed. The second type of auxiliary verb is what we call the modal auxiliary verb. Okay, so we should actually treat this as the number 2 type of verb rules. This was number 1. Let's call this number 2. Because modal auxiliary verbs, although they belong to the auxiliary verb family, they actually behave differently. All right. So number 2. We have a role or a type of verb known as the modal auxiliary verb. Now these verbs, they help to introduce or show a variety of things, and I'll make a list of some of these things. Number 1, they show what we call ability. Modal auxiliary verbs show what we call ability, okay, or disability. E.g., if I make a statement like I can dance, the verb can there is modal auxiliary, can. I can dance. That is denoting ability. So I'm trying to communicate to my audience that I have the ability to dance. Do you see that now? Excellent. Now, a modal auxiliary verb will show disability when we add the word not to it. E.g., I cannot dance. It means I don't have the ability. All right, but you must be careful. Cannot, in quote here, must be written together and not separated. Because in the English language syntax, when you separate can from not, a new meaning is derived or a new meaning is generated. So whenever can and not join together, join or come together, they denote what we call disability. Together as an entity, they show disability, or they show what we call impossibility. Okay? He cannot be sleeping by this time. They are trying to say it is impossible that he is asleep. You see that? But when we separate can from not, what happens there is we are now saying, in addition to this activity, this person can do this other one. E.g., I can not only dance, but I can sing. So I'm saying, in addition to my ability to dance, I equally have the ability to sing. But this cannot, in quote here, is not written together. It is separated. Cannot instead of cannot. I hope that makes sense. Excellent. All right. So the next thing a modal auxiliary verb will show, a modal auxiliary verb will show what we call possibility. Just like I mentioned before, possibility, impossibility. Okay, a modal auxiliary verb will show possibility or what we call impossibility. Yes. Now, possibility can also be referred to as probability, the chance, okay, that something can happen. You see that now? So if I use a modal auxiliary verb like may, M-A-Y, and I make a sentence like I may be going to the gym, I may, it means I am not certain. It means there's a probability, that is to say there will be a chance, or there is a chance that I could go, or there is a chance that I could not go. Yes. So the modal auxiliary verb may shows us what we call uncertainty. You are not certain. So we use may when we are not sure of our having to do something or to go somewhere or to carry out an activity. Okay. Now, the modal auxiliary verbs can also show, we can also use them in making requests. Yes. E.g., Could I have a cup of water? Can I have this dance? Do you see that now? Will you please shut the door? All of these are requests, using modal auxiliary verbs to present requests. Please note that a request could either be polite or impolite. It depends on the structure of the sentence and the kind of modal auxiliary verb that you employ. Moving on. The third role of a verb here, we are going to look at something we call linking verbs, also called copular verbs. Linking verbs, also called copular verbs. That's the next role of a verb. Linking verbs, also called copular verbs. So, the function of a copular verb, that is to say, the role of a copular verb in a sentence, is for linking. Okay? The question then is, linking what? A copular verb links a subject to its complement. That is what a copular verb does. A copular verb is used to connect. It serves as a linkage between a subject and its complement, that is the subject complement or the complement of the subject. Excellent. Now, this linking verb or these linking verbs include verbs like we have is here. It performs linking function. We have seems. We have a verb like appear, etc. Okay, so let's give examples. The man is good looking. The man is good looking. So you see that the verb is there is connecting the man to the quality of good looks. That is what we mean by linking. It connects the man, which is in this case the subject, to the quality of good looks. Excellent. Okay, elephants appear large, or elephants seem large. So it is linking. The verb seem there or appear is linking elephants as a plural subject to the complement, which is large. Do you see that? Good. That's what we call linking verbs. Okay? Now, there is a fourth role of verbs which we call transitive. Transitive. Now, when does a verb function as transitive? This happens when that verb is able to attract what we call a direct object. At this point, I would like to implore you to see the video on the sentence patterns so you understand some of the terminologies that I employ in this video. Okay? Good. So, like I said, the transitive verbs, they are verbs that attract what we call a direct object. That is a direct receiver of an action. So simply put, any verb that shows a transfer of action, that is, somebody did something to someone, most likely that verb is functioning as transitive. In tertiary level exams under GST111, all right, which is communication in English, students are often tested in identifying the function of a verb. Yes, so you find questions where the examiner makes a sentence and then is asking you, the verb in this sentence is functioning as A. You see an option that says linking verb. B. You see helping verb or auxiliary. C. They could give you the other name for linking, which is copular, and many a student fails this type of question. Yes, because they don't know that the other name for a linking verb is a copular verb. And then lastly, they could say transitive. You see that now? So I want to believe that by the end of this video, when you see any of the verbs I mentioned, under each of these rules, you can tell the role or the function that the verb in question performs. Excellent. Let's go on. So a transitive verb shows a transfer of action. For example, I make a sentence like, the hunter hit the dog. Hit, H-I-T. The hunter hit the dog. Now the verb hit, H-I-T in quotes, is a transitive verb. Yes, because it carries a direct object, which is the dog. So we can analyze the entire sentence structure that the man performed an action, the hunter in question, performed an action. The action performed was hitting, and the receiver of that action was the dog. So that is what we mean by transitive. Okay, and in the English language, most verbs can be made to function as either transitive or intransitive. All right, it depends on the grammatical skill of the user. Yes. So an intransitive verb, on the other hand, is that verb that will not attract a direct object. It carries no object. It does not have a direct object. Yes, that's intransitive. Okay, so a popular example, as in the scriptural text, John 11:35, Jesus wept. You see that? Jesus, subject, wept, verb, no direct object. Nobody received the weeping. I don't know if you get me now. Good. So it therefore means that the verb wept there is functioning in an intransitive capacity. I have to put that down. I said we have, permit me, transitive, and then we have intransitive. So this is the spelling of the intransitive. All right. Transitive takes a direct object. Intransitive does not. Let's generate a formula for that. Transitive plus OD. That is, transitive attracts a direct object. Intransitive minus OD. So the intransitive verb rejects an object. A transitive verb attracts an object. Intransitive verb rejects an object. Is that clear? Lovely. Okay, so Jesus wept. The verb wept there is intransitive. Yes, it does not attract an object. All right, that's good. We are learning now. The transitive verb is of two types, depending on the number of objects it can attract. The transitive verb is of two types, depending or based on the number of objects it can attract. If a transitive verb attracts only an object, it is called monotransitive. If a transitive verb attracts only an object, it is called monotransitive. But if it can attract two objects, it is said to be ditransitive. Ditransitive. All right, this is the reason why we have a sentence pattern called SVO and SVOO. Here you see that the object is one. So this is telling us that the transitive verb here is actually monotransitive. Here you see that the object is two. All right, that is to say the indirect object, which is OI, and the direct object, which is OD. It therefore means that the verbal element here is a ditransitive verb. Ditransitive. Please take note of these things. Very important. All right. Again, endeavor you see the video on sentence patterns. It will be greased to your meal. Very beneficial to you. All right. So that's that for the transitive and intransitive verbs. Okay, so the roles of verbs, I said helping verb, where I talked about auxiliary, and I mentioned primary auxiliary and modal auxiliary. And then I made modal auxiliary the second role of verbs. And I told you it shows ability, disability, possibility, impossibility, probability, and it is used for making requests. And I told you a request could either be polite or impolite, depending on the kind of modal auxiliary verb employed and the structure too. All right. I mentioned the third role of verbs as the linking verbs. They help to connect a subject to its complement. And I told you linking verbs are also called copular verbs. All right. And I gave you examples here. Now, do not forget, I mentioned that the primary auxiliary verb, the main example is the verb to be. And I told you the verb to be is strange for two main reasons. One, other verbs possess 5 inflectional forms, but the verb to be possesses 8, as you can see on your screen. 8 inflectional forms. 2, when we see the forms of a verb, we can trace those forms back to the root verb. But in the case of the verb to be, we cannot identify the forms, or we cannot trace the forms to the mother verb or to the root verb, which in this case is the verb be. All right, excellent. Now, before we go on, you should know that the difference between being and being, B-E-E-N and B-E-I-N-G, is in their usage. All right, so the verb B-E-E-N is often used with a group of verbs in English we call anomalous verbs, which include has, have, and had. H-A-S, H-A-V-E, and H-A-D. These are the anomalous verbs. So whenever I am given a gap before the verb being, and I am to select the verb that should go with it, I will most likely give preference to the anomalous verbs, has, have, and had. Okay? Conversely, if I am given has, have, or had in a sentence, and a gap is positioned for me to choose between being and being, I will give preference to B-E-E-N. Excellent. So let's put that down. B-E-E-N plus, that is to say, it attracts has, have, and had. Okay? But the B-E-I-N-G attracts these other members of the verb to be. That is, was, are, and were. Please take note of that. All right. Sentences like she is being silly. You are just being naughty. The being there is B-E-I-N-G because we made mention of verbs like is and verbs like are, or a verb like is and a verb like are. Do you see that? So whenever the verb is, was, are, and were, you should give preference to B-E-I-N-G over B-E-E-N. These are basic syntax rules that will make your communication more sophisticated and your writing much better. All right? Excellent. Is there any other function we are missing? Okay, that's that for the rules of verbs. Now we have other types of verbs and they perform rules too. Okay. All right. We have a verb we call stative. Okay. Let's call that number 4. Oh no, that should not be number 4. Transitive was 4. Intransitive was 5. 6. This should be. We have what is called stative. Stative. All right. Now, when is a verb functioning as stative? A verb functions as stative when it denotes an action that we cannot demonstrate. A verb functions as stative when it denotes an action that we cannot demonstrate. All right? A verb functions as stative when it denotes an action that we cannot demonstrate. So, what are the examples of stative verbs? Number 1, verbs that denote brain action. Verbs like think. You can't demonstrate thinking. It is not like a verb we call jump that I can literally levitate and you can see that evidently. But I cannot actually demonstrate thinking. I can only try to act it, but I cannot. Yes. I can try to take a pensive position, to make you understand that, okay, I'm trying to show you I'm thinking, but it does not really demonstrate what is happening up there in my brain. You see that now? Good. So we also have verbs like believe. You can't demonstrate believe. All right. Now, another category of stative verbs we have verbs that show what we call the five senses: see, hear, feel, taste. You see that now? Good. Now, because these verbs denote actions that are not that we cannot demonstrate, or actions that cannot be demonstrated, they do not attract ing in ordinary usage. Please take note of that. Stative verbs do not attract ing in ordinary usage. Meaning it is wrong to say or to make a sentence or a statement like, I am seeing you. That's wrong. That's an ordinary usage. Seeing is not grammatically acceptable ordinarily. That is in ordinary usage. Yes, because the only verbs that should take ing, grammatically speaking, are verbs that their actions can be demonstrated. Jump, shout, sing, talk. They can attract ing because we can demonstrate them. But whenever a verb cannot be demonstrated, it should not attract ing. So sentences like I am seeing you is wrong. Instead, you say I can see you. Sentences like I am not hearing you, just like when people talk on phone, they are on the blower and they say things like I am not hearing you. Okay, I am hearing you now. That's wrong. You simply say I cannot hear you, or you say I can hear you now. You see that now? Excellent. All right, so you do not give ing to stative verbs. Please remember this rule very importantly. It is a part of your English language exams across various levels. All right, moving on. The opposite of a stative verb is a dynamic verb. You can call that your number 7 type or your number 7 rule. A stative verb has an opposite called the dynamic verb. So a verb is said to function dynamically when its action can be demonstrated. Just like I mentioned, verbs like jump, sing, shout, talk, run, walk, sit, hop, and so on. Okay? So such verbs can attract ing because their actions can be demonstrated. I hope we're learning. Excellent. So that's that for the roles of verbs. We equally have something, before I forget, we have something called regular verbs and irregular verbs. Now, the concept of a regular and an irregular verb comes from how they form their past tense and their past participle. We're coming to verb forms now. Okay? A verb is said to be regular, or a regular verb is said to be that verb that forms its past tense and past participle in the regular way. Do you see that? While an irregular verb forms its past tense and past participle irregularly. Now, what is the regular way for past tense formation? It is with the addition of what we call ed. So when we want to form past tense in English or past participle, we actually introduce ed. Do you see that? This is why the past tense form is also called ed1, while the past participle tense is also called ed2. Are we learning? Excellent. So a regular verb is just that verb that forms its past tense in a regular way. And what is the regular way of forming past tense? It is by attracting ed. An example now is the verb dance, which I cited earlier on as I began teaching. All right, you can see this is ed. Good. So this is a regular verb. That's what it means. So a verb is now said to be irregular when its past tense and past participle are formed irregularly. Now, what do we mean by irregularly? Irregularly means they do not take ed. They could take other things like en. You see that now? They could take other things like what? En. Okay? An example is in the verb, the form of the verb we call woven. Look at it there. Yes. This is the past participle of the verb weave. It has an irregular past participle form called woven. Do you see that? Other examples of irregular verbs include the verb song, all right, which is the past participle form of the verb sing. It has a past tense called sang. You see that they form their own past tense without the addition of ed. So such verbs are regarded as irregular because their past tense and past participle formation follows an irregular pattern. That's what we are saying. Excellent. Okay, so that's what we call regular and irregular verbs. All right. Permit me to grab the duster. I'll be back. Okay. So now we are going to look at what we call forms of verbs. Let's take that. That's the last. Okay, so the forms of verbs, remember I said that the basic forms of verbs are 5. We have what is called the base form, which is also called the bare infinitive form. Base form is also called bare infinitive form, or we say present plural form. Present plural form. All right. Now, number 2, we have the S form, where S stands for singular. That is singular. So this is to suggest to us or to you that when a verb ends with S, it is singular. Please take note of that. This particular point is relevant because many a student cannot actually form what we call singular and plural forms. Are you there? A lot of students cannot. They cannot form singular and plural forms. They don't know when to use singular verbs and plural verbs. So please note that when a verb does not end with S, it is plural. But when it ends with S, it is singular. Then number 3, you remember I mentioned what I called the ED1, which is also known as the past tense form. Number 4, we have the ED2, which is the past participle tense form. And number 5 is what we call the continuous form, also known as ing form. ing form. Now we have a 6th form, like I mentioned, but it is not one of the basic forms. All right, but there are times in communication we employ this form. So I'm going to just put it here for knowledge sake, so you know it. It is called the to infinitive. To infinitive form. So the first 5 are the basic forms, while the last form is not part of the basic, but it can be employed in English language communication. All right. So to make you understand this, we are going to take an example. So let's see. I'm going to put that here. Let's take a verb like jump. Now the verb jump here is without S at the end. So it belongs to what we call the base form. And it is also called bare infinitive. You know what it means to be bare? Bare means naked. Bare there also means there's nothing else attached to it. To infinitive here means to is attached. Are you getting this? To infinitive here, the last form, means that to is attached to a bare infinitive. We're coming there. Now, John is bare because it does not attract anything before it or after it. Okay? The singular form of jump is what we call jumps. S form. So this will belong here. This is what we are saying. Jumps. Jumps. Alright? The past tense of jump is what we call jumped. ED. So here we go. Jumped. The past participle of jump is going to remain jumped. Here we go. I hope we're learning. Do you see that? Good. So you can see now that jump takes ED in both the past and past participle. It therefore tells us that jump is a regular verb. Are you learning? Good. Now, jump, we have an ing form which we call jumping, continuous form. All right. So already, as a matter of fact, we have completed the 5 inflectional forms of the verb jump. Complete. Yes. So I jumped to school. That's a sentence, assuming. All right. She jumps a lot. I jumped to bed last night. We had jumped to church over the weekend. I like jumping. You see that? Good. So I just made sentences using each of the forms. Alright? Now, the to infinitive form is simply to plus the bare infinitive. Permit me to draw that arrow so you understand how it works. So this is to jump. To jump. Okay? So I can make a statement. You remember where I said, I like jumping? I can make a sentence like, I like to jump. To jump. Do you see that now? Good. That's why I said, it is not, the to infinitive is not a basic form. Yes. Alright, because more often than not in the use of the English language, anywhere we employ a to infinitive, an ing verb, that is a continuous form verb, can simply do the job. I like to jump. I like jumping. She likes to shout. She likes shouting. Do you see that now? Do you like to run? Do you like running? So the to infinitive is not a basic form. Yes, but it's okay to know it. Alright, there are times that it just comes in handy when we communicate and then we just shoot. Okay? It is still correct grammatically to use the to infinitive. Alright, just that in exam conditions, when we now discuss what we call acceptability, that is what is more appropriate, you may have to give preference to ing forms over to infinitive. For example, in the popular Unified Tertiary Matriculation exams conducted by the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board, a question was asked where they said, my grandfather or my grandmother, I think one of those two, told us a story that made us dash. My grandfather told us a story that made us dash. And we had an array of options like made us laugh, made us to laugh, made us laughing, made us laughed, past tense. Alright? In that kind of a context now, we will have to give preference to the bare infinitive laugh over the to infinitive to laugh. Do you see that? To laugh is correct, but for the sake of appropriateness, that is what is more acceptable, I will have to give preference to the bare infinitive form in that option, which was laugh. Please take note. Alright, questions on verb forms are numerous. they are asked across various exams every other year. All right, so the IELTS students, the TOEFL, the vocabulary part of the GRE or the English part of the GRE, if you are preparing for any of these, you need to understand your syntax properly. Okay, so this just explains what we call the forms of the verb. So we're done with the outline. We know the definition, we know the types or the roles, and we know the verb forms. Okay, now I'll need you to do an assignment for me. I'm going to write out a list of verbs now, and then you are going to create a form for each of the basic forms we have, okay, or for the 6. So this should be like your assignment, or let's call it your practice. Yes, because if you do not practice, you will not remember some of these things, and you will not understand them better. So there's always room for practice. Yes, so when it comes to academic work, the surest way to excellence is practice. Good. So take note of these verbs and try to create or try to outline their forms from base form to S to ED1 to ED2 to ing and to infinitive. Write out the forms yourself without spying. Do not consult any book or any other language authority, English language authority. Try to work, all right, independently and see what you can do. So when you are done exhausting the list of verbs I'm going to write now, you can consult sources for answers, or you can simply just send your work as an attachment and forward it to my Gmail, all right, so that I can get your responses and I can equally reply. Okay, so let's go. The Gmail account here is info.convenantscience tutorials@gmail.com. All right, so this is like your assignment, and I need you to treat it as such. Forward your assignments, the answers to this mail, attach it as a file. All right, excellent. Number 1, create the forms or write out the forms for the verb kill. Number 2, write out the forms for the verb sing. Number 3, write out the forms for the verb run. Number 4, come. Number 5, lie, that is a false statement, to make a false statement. Number 6, lie, that is to lie down. Lay, to produce eggs. Yes, just like we have birds that lay eggs. We equally have lay, to place something on another. All right. Number 9, hang. Number 10, weave. Number 11, cost. Number 12, grind. Number 13, lose. Number 14, ring. 15, cast. So that should do 15 verbs. Create, or rather write out their forms for the 6: base form, S form, ED1, ED2, ING, and to infinitive. Okay? Then go the extra mile. Let's make the assignment more robust. Go the extra mile. Create sentences on each of the forms you have generated. It's going to be a lot, but it is worth it. Yes, what is learning without practice? Give it your best shot, and I'm sure you'll find the English language fun when you learn it with Mr. Techno. Until next time, I'll see you.